Today's lesson is for this easy crochet flower. You can attach it to any project. It will look fantastic on a bag or a beanie, or you could even make a lot of them and attach them to a blanket or an afghan. I hope you really enjoy this video, and don't forget to leave comments in the box below and to like the video if you enjoy it. This project is great for beginners as we only need to know how to do a chain stitch, a single crochet, a double crochet and a slip stitch. I do take it slow at the beginning of each stitch so that you know what you are going to do. And thank you for watching. First of all, we want to make our slip knot. So grabbing the wool, short end between our middle finger and our thumb, wrapping our yarn twice, grabbing our left piece, pulling up and over and off, pulling down on the long part a little bit, there we go, wrapping around once. We have two loops, grabbing our left, pulling over and pushing up. We want to make a chain that is about 60 centimeters long. You can use any type of wool for this project. I'm using 8-ply with a 4mm crochet hook. What we want to do is single crochet in every chain across. This one on our hook does not count as the first one, so we ignore that one. Here is our first stitch, here is our second stitch. We're going to go into the second chain with our hook and then yarning over, pulling up a loop. We have two on our hook, yarning over, pull through two into our next chain space. Going to pull up a loop. We have two on our hook, pulling up a loop, pulling through two. Going into the stitch, yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over and pulling through two. You could also make this row in a half double crochet. So going into every stitch across until we get to the other end. We are up to the end of our row, so now we want to chain 3. 1, 2 and 3. Spinning our work around. We want to skip 2 stitches. Now this one is classed as our first stitch, so we're not actually going to count that one because this is where a chain is coming out of. So we're skipping 1, 2 and single crocheting into the next stitch. Going under both loops. So we have 2 loops of the stitch on our hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop, we have 2 and pulling through 2. Chaining 3, 1, 2, 3. Skipping 2 stitches and single crocheting into the next. We want to chain 3, skip 2 stitches, 1, 2 and single crochet into the next. I'm not sure if this is a very good colour to demonstrate with, so please let me know if you can't quite see this with this colour and I won't use it again. So that's 1, 2 and 3. Skipping 2 stitches, single crocheting into the next. There isn't much sunlight coming through the window either, so that's not helping. So chaining up 3, skipping 2 stitches, single crocheting into the next. We just want to repeat this all the way across until we get to the end. So I'm coming up to the end of my work. And because this is a beginner's project, you may not, and we didn't use multiples, we may not have the correct amount of stitches. But trust me, it doesn't matter, because you are not going to see this part of our flower when it is finished. So this is just a great project to practice your stitches. So I've done my chain 3 and I'm going to skip 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and then single crochet into the next stitch. And then I'm going to chain up 3. And then I do actually have 3 stitches left, so that's 1, 2, and a chain on the end, which counts as our 3. But if you don't worry about it. Just single crochet into the last stitch. So our last stitch is our chain 1 from our previous row. So going into the end of our row and then making a single crochet. So if you only had 1 stitch, you can only skip 1 stitch. Doesn't matter, really doesn't matter, because you're not going to see it. So now what we want to do is chain up 3 again, 1, 2 and 3, and we're going to spin our work around. So this is what our work should look like. We've got this nice solid strip down the bottom with these loops coming off it, and now we're going to work our petals into these loops. So we've chained up 3. And now we want to work 3 double crochets into this space here. So wrapping your hook, going into the space, wrapping your hook, pulling up a loop, we have 3, wrapping your yarn and pulling through 2, wrapping your hook and pulling through 2. That was our double crochet. We'll do that again, wrapping our hook, going into the loop, wrapping our hook, we have 3 on our hook, 3 loops, wrapping our hook, pulling through 2, we have 2 on our hook, wrapping our yarn and pulling through 2. So that's 2 double crochets. We want to put in 3, so 1 more, wrapping, going into the stitch, pulling up a loop, we have 3 on our hook, wrapping our yarn, pulling through 2, wrapping our yarn and pulling through 2. Now we want to work 3 chains. 1, 2 and 3. Now you're probably going to think, where is that going to go to now? We are going to slip stitch down into this loop. So I'm holding my stitch on there so it doesn't fall off. You might not have to. Going into the loop with our hook, wrapping our yarn and pulling up, we have 2 loops. We want to pull this loop through that one. So just pulling it through, and there we go. That is our first petal. A chain 3, 1, 2, 3 double crochets, and our chain 3 with our slip stitch. So now we want to slip stitch over into this space, because at the moment our yarn is working out of this space. So going into that loop space with our hook, wrapping our yarn, pulling up a loop, we've got 2 on our hook, pulling this loop through that loop. We are now working, see how we're working out of this space now, because our yarn is coming out of that loop. We want to chain up 3, 1, 2 and 3. We're going to wrap our hook, going into the space, wrapping our hook, pulling up a loop, we have 3 on our hook, wrapping, pulling through 2, wrapping and pulling through 2. We need to put 2 more double crochets into the space. So it's yarning over into the space, yarning over, pulling up a loop, through 2 and through 2. That's 2. We need to put in 1 more. And now we need to chain 3. So 1, 2 and 3. Going back down into this loop with a slip stitch. So going down into there, pulling up a loop, we have 2 on our hook, You want to put the left one and pull it through the right one. We now have another petal to our flower. And we want to continue this all the way across. So now we need to be working out of this gap, so we need to slip stitch into there, so putting your hook into the next space, chain 3 space, wrapping your hook, pulling up a loop. We have 2. You want to put your left one through your right one, so pulling it through the right one like that. We are now working out of this space here. So chaining up 3, 2 and 3. We want to work 3 double crochets into our space. Going into the space, 1, 2, and 3, chaining up 3, slip stitching down into the same space, going into the space, yarning over, pulling up a loop. We have 2 on our hook. You want to pull the left one through the right one. You need to skip over to here with the slip stitch. So going into the space, yarning over, pulling up a loop. We have 2 on our hook, and then pulling the left loop through the right loop. And we're repeating what we did on the previous petal. So chaining up 3, 1, 2 and 3, yarning over, going into the loop with 1 double crochet and 2 and another one, so that's 3, chaining up 3, slip stitching down into the same space, going into the space with our hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop. We have 2 on our hook, pulling the left one through the right one. So we should have something starting to look like this. So there's actually gaps between our petals. It's looking pretty cool. We just want to repeat this all the way across until we get to the end. So I'm up to my last one, so we're going to chain 3 and 3 double crochets into our last space, and then a chain 3 and a slip stitch. Oops. Oh, get in there. There we go. To finish off. Now when we cut this part, we want to make it about 12 to 14 inches long. And then we are just going to do a chain and then just keep pulling out, so that just secures that down. So we should have something that looks nothing like a flower and a lot like a piece of seaweed. Now what we want to do is sew in this short end. We're just going to sew it into the row of single crochet that we have on our first row. So just weaving the needle in and out of the stitches. My general rule is about 2 inches that you'll sew it in for. Make sure you pull that back so that it doesn't tighten up. And then finding a sharp pair of scissors, snipping off that little end. So now we can start constructing our flower. So just re-threading our needle. And of course it never works when you're live on camera. Murphy's Law. And to construct this flower, we're going to be just, this is the side that we worked on, so having your tail on your left hand side we are just going to wrap this around, and just wrapping that row of single crochet, rolling it up a couple of times, and then we're just going to secure it with a couple of stitches. So I'm just going from one side of the single crochet through to the other. Now you can wrap this up a number of ways. You can, I'll show you what you can do. You can just continue to wrap it so that the single crochet row is wrapping around itself. And of course you will put little stitches as you go, so you can wrap it around and around. Okay, and then you have something like that, which is like a rose. Or you can do it the other way, which is the way I like to do it. And what I do is I wrap it for a little bit and then add some stitches to secure it. And then I start to lay this single crochet bit flat. So instead of having it upright like that, I lay it flat, so I sort of curl it over a bit, and I'm lining up the top of this single crochet row with the bottom of this single crochet row. So it's very hard to describe and see because it's all the same colour. So that is one row from here up. That's where the bottom of the row is, and this is our top. So I'm just lining up the top. So as we go around, it actually lays flat. Now I'll show you what I mean. So laying it flat and lining it up, and I'm stitching through the bottom of the previous row and then through the top of the next row, laying it flat again. And I think that this way, this is only my personal opinion, that it gives you a nicer back on the flower because it's nice and flat and it's easier to attach to pieces. And of course you're flipping it over as you go, making sure this side looks good too, because that's the side you're going to be looking at. More thumbs today. Don't know why. Sometimes you have good days with tutorials and other days you don't. Okay, now this is really hard to see on camera, but I'm laying this bit flat over the petal. Some things you just need to be shown in person, I think, don't we? But if you find this way too hard, just try it the other way. So we're just making the back of it flat, and it gradually gets wider as we go around. And it's really hard to see because it's all the one colour. So there's the last row I did before, and we're just laying that flat next to it. And then just stitching it up. So I can just continue this around. Ta-da! We now have our beautiful, beautiful flower. Now, I hope that was pretty easy for you guys, especially if you're a beginner. There's nothing like making something going, oh, I made that. Even when you start out, you still get the same thrill when you've been doing it for a long time as well. So you can sew in the ends at the back if you like, or you can leave them long so that you can attach your flower to a project, but just sew across to the middle, and that way when you sew it on to something, it will be centered. Well, thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoy this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because there will be a lot more future crochet tutorials, and also leave me a comment in the boxes below. But until next time, have a great day.